All right, let's get cooking. So, so here we are. Webinar series number 5. Thank you, partners, for joining. We got a lot to cover, sir. Even though people are still signing in, we're going to get started here. Sean Browning with Tealium, heading up the partner enablement team, and we got some exciting detail to cover today. But let me first make a couple of introductions. We have the head of our partner marketing, Nicole Dune, on the line. Good morning, Nicole.
Hi, Sean. Good morning.
All right, and then we also have a special guest subject matter expert, Armando Rosario, but he goes by Mondo. Mondo, good morning.
Morning, everyone.
Spectacular. So let me kick off with a couple of housekeeping things real quick, and then we'll move over to the presentation. So next slide, the housekeeping details. Today's presentation is going to be recorded, and so as we do want to keep this interactive, yeah, the next one, please. Before the housekeeping, we want to use the Q&A panel for the questions, and so I'll monitor this. Nicole will monitor the chat window. And so anytime there's questions, any details, anything you want to know further on or dive into as Mondo's covering some of his really compelling content, then we'll dive into that. Or we'll save some of the Q&A for the end of the webinar. But we are going to record this so that way we can post this online on the Tealium website. This is going to get kind of technical. We're going to start off slow. We're going to build up. There are going to be some slides, but we're going to kick into data object. We're going to kick into JSON and HTML. We are going to move into building some really cool capabilities, not just in IQ, but also specifically in AudienceStream. One of those things we'll kick into is building an engagement model. So at the end of this webinar, you guys will have seen how Mondo builds his engagement application and method. So that way you have that as a takeaway after this. And inside of AudienceStream, you'll be able to do that yourself. So what we're going to cover today, bidirectional access to the Tealium IQ data layer. We're going to cover the cross-device visitor stitching. And some of this, we've covered in previous webinars, but Mondo has his particular spin. When he talks to his partners and his customers, he provides quite a bit different detail than what I provide. But also the way we interact and take action on the data with the connectors, but then also, like I mentioned, the engagement model as well. So we've got some pretty cool stuff kicking off, but we are going to start slow with some slides, build up the picture and the story, and then you're going to have some amazing stuff towards the end. So now what I'd like to do is turn it over to Mondo, a little bit of subject matter expert introduction here. So Mondo, you're on the sales engineering team, but I would put you more as a solution consultant. Your background, your experience, you've got quite a bit of a portfolio that we're drawing from. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I like to make up my title anyway, so.
Don't we all? So like many of us on the line, you're a dad, and that is definitely a really cool priority. I like that. But photography. So you're quite a bit into photography and food. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and they go pretty hand in hand. I got my camera and taking pictures of food, and everybody on Facebook hates me because of it.
Awesome. And then I saw back in the day around Y2K, you were in the Army. You do quite a bit of traveling. I know that much. And then talks about you're fluent in 14 languages. I had no idea you knew even the second or third. What are some of those languages you know?
Well, sadly, 13 of them are programming languages, so they don't really count.
Nice one. Well, and I'm being in Portland, Oregon, where Nike's backyard. I'm a long range runner. I've run a couple of marathons. Every year I do a couple of 200-mile relays, which other attendees know. What do you do if you're not doing marathons these days? What are you doing? These running from airport to airport?
Sadly, eating too much instead.
There we go. That's the peril of the occupation, I suppose. But definitely geek, and I would even put that into into capital letters. You have experience with agencies. You have experience with digital backgrounds, experience creating content, and so forth. You're definitely a technologist wrapped into I don't know, you would say more like an agency clothing. So it's pretty cool, your background. I'm glad you're joining us today. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
What do you have for us today?
So like the housekeeping slide, we're going to go through the data layer. It's actually surprising how much you can talk about the data layer and not get completely bored, but maybe that's the geek side of me. So we'll talk about that from an IQ standpoint and from an audience standpoint, or audience room standpoint. They're going to build on top of each other. We're going to show you what we're trying to solve first. We're going to show what tools we're enabling you with, give you a little heads up of some new things that came out, and then transition to AudienceStream, use this to build a unified profile of a user, show you how to debug the fact that everything that I set up, I can go in and debug it. I can debug it at an individual level. I can debug it at a mass level, right?
Perfect.
So we'll walk through all of that step by step.
That's great. All right, let's get kicking.
Yeah, so I promise not to be forever in the slides, but I do have some slides because I want to make sure the concepts resonate. All right. So everybody should see the challenge, right? So this is the challenge we have today. This is what everybody's trying to solve. You're talking to your clients. You are part of the stack, or you're managing that stack, or you're consulting them on how to work within the stack. Because the reality is nobody works with one stack, or not all Adobe, because Adobe doesn't have all products yet. Google doesn't have all products yet. So we're all picking and choosing the vendors that we're working with, right? And that's the great thing about the tag management is we can pick the best of breed. We're not stuck in, hey, well, this is the A/B testing that Adobe gives me, and I can't go and use Optimizely because Optimizely doesn't exist, right? But the problem is this is all fractured. While we have different tags, they also have different data collection points, right? We'll talk about that in that detail point. And then we also have different views between these clouds, because the reality is these clouds don't talk to each other. They're competitors. They don't want to share information. So you've got a disparate view of your user between each of these stacks. Right? We know tag management is going to solve the operational side of that. Just curate all the tags, right? Instead of having 50 of those tags on my website inside of my code base, I'm just going to have one tag, manage it inside of there. But that data layer, right? So you guys have probably seen all these slides before. That data layer is key to everything we do, and that's why I'm going to get deeper into it today. It's something that we want you to feel really comfortable speaking to your clients. Why do they want to put that effort into building that data layer? What are the boundaries that you can push with that data layer? New things you can do. How do you get around the fact that I can't get an update? But the data layer is going to define everything that we do. It's going to enable us to control the data, right? We can put some compliance on top of there, but also create new data points, enrichments about the user, about the page, the interaction, and so forth. And we know that that data layer is essentially what fuels everything. So the data layer, whether it's coming from a desktop, a mobile experience, offline, and so forth, the data layer is a concept. It's going to fuel Tealium IQ. We're going to push all of that through AudienceStream, and I'm going to show you how that actually looks, right? You're going to see the data actually flowing through into AudienceStream with our discovery tools. And then data access. We had the session last week about data access, so you know that you have that raw access to all that data, and even in an ETL format so that you can use it somewhere else like Tableau or Splunk or Looker. Right. So what that data layer is, so let's get into the specifics of it. The data layer is a concept. The data layer doesn't exist in one element. It consists of multiple. So you got the UDO, and this is what most people refer to as the data layer. This is just the JSON object that is on the page, right? This just says the client, the advertiser, the site owner has pushed this information in a structured way and says, here's information about this interaction, about this user, about the state that you can't see through the page. First-party cookies, metadata, JavaScript variables, query string parameters. These are all things that we will pick up automatically for you, and you just create a mapping that says, I want to use a specific first-party cookie, and I want to use a query string parameter, and I can use those for a lot of different things. I can use it for built-in load row logic, or I can pass it as a data point to a vendor. So all of this funnels down into the umbrella that we call the data layer. All right, so let's get geeky. What does that UDO, what we call a universal data object, look like? So again, I mentioned it's just JSON, right? So if you want to get super geeky, JavaScript object notation just means JavaScript way of referencing an object. You'll notice that we go with a flat structure, right? And the reason we've done that is it makes it really approachable for any user. You don't have to be a JavaScript developer. You could be a marketing user and understand, hey, I've got a page name and here's my value. I've got a page product code and here's my value. It's a lot easier to reference. You can get more complex scenarios, right? And we do this commonly with products on a product category page. We need an array of those. So we can still support that. We can support any data layer that's out there. If your client has an existing data layer, maybe they're transitioning from Google Tag Manager or one of those other guys, we can definitely leverage that data layer in its hierarchical form too. We just like to go, when we start off, with the flat structure because it's a lot easier to approach from all users. But the only difference is it's going to be page name versus bsb.rr.itempage.product types, right? It's a matter of reference. We can use the same kind of references in our system as well. So we've got the full flexibility in there. We use this all the time for clients who are transitioning as well. One key point about this, and this is a key for pitching it to your clients, right? You've got one location to manage, and IT loves this because I'm a developer and I hate having to have scattered code. I hate having to bloat my code base with vendor-specific code. I grabbed a screenshot from an actual website, right? And well, I had a copy and paste error. It's supposed to say tag 1. Essentially, here's one tag, and here's another tag. Here's Site Catalyst tag. I don't even know who this is. But you'll see that they're replicating data points, and the data points are different between. So my page name will have a different value than this other tag. I might have a different formatting for data points. So I have the disparity of data, and I've also got the bloat in my code base. Every time I want to make an update, I've got to go and find every location that is affecting the data collection for this and make sure that the data is proper. So what we're going to create is one central place to have that data. Now, this is just a split view, but it's one data layer there. And we use that data layer in dynamic scenarios too, right? This is a static scenario where they just they expose the data through the JSON object on the page at page render, but we can also pick up dynamic data layers. So when you call utag.view, utag.link, right, our dynamic event tracking, we can pass in the data layer at that point as well. And we'll show you with extensions how we can build on top of that, or we can even generate a data layer on the fly based on some rules. So you're never stuck into one system. The UDO is just meant to give you that starting point, cover most of the data points, and especially the data points that you don't have direct access to. All right. So how do we extend that, right? And what I did here is I walked through a couple of extensions. I'm not going to walk through every extension because that could take forever, but extensions are my favorite part of Tealium. It makes the tag management side, our capabilities with the extensions, so much better than the competitors. And this is super vital for you guys, right? Once you've got that data layer exposed, you're kind of stuck with that. How do I go and pivot and say, well, information is wrong or information is missing, or maybe I just need to do a concatenation, right? Maybe hard to see here, but this page name is essentially a concatenation of a page type plus the page title. How do we create those things without having to go back through IT? And that's what the extensions do. So I walked through a couple data extensions. So we've got the set data, right? Key here is one or many data sources based on a single condition. We're going to use that to correct modified data points. The scenario is data in the product catalog was entered wrong. It's going to take a long time for that to enter. They've got to go back through a third party or something. Meanwhile, analytics, retargeting, and any other tag that's using this data is collecting faulty data. So I might have undefined, I might have a copy and paste error where I have another product's information inside of here. And I need to adjust that without going back through that cycle. So before, I had a SKU that we know is right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, nice and simple. But we have no product ID. We have a placeholder name for product name, and we have a placeholder price for product price. This is no good because our analytics is not showing proper ROI, and our retargeting is retargeting off of the wrong name or retargeting off the wrong tier of pricing. So I'm going to switch into here. I'm going to run through the other ones really quick. Lookup table, when you want to set one data point with multiple conditions. So if I have, in this case, correcting all the product IDs, I want to go by the SKU value and I want to create a new product ID. I'm going to have hundreds of these. And this is the method you use rather than using a set data for each of those.
And Armando, let me pause on that lookup table idea real quick. That lookup data table, we're talking about hundreds of rows, which is really good, but I've seen some sites that have millions of rows. And so one caveat here for the lookup table is when Tealium's operating using a lookup table, we're leveraging the browser cache. So you want to keep the lookup in the hundreds and not the millions of rows, because this will leverage the browser cache and the memory there locally. So you want to keep that in mind as partners, that lookup tables are fantastic. They're really good and they're really functional, but you don't want to load an entire customer's catalog into this type of a lookup table. You don't want to do that on the web analytics side at the time of report generation or something like that. But I just wanted to highlight that differentiator because that bit me one time in the past, Mondo.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's something
Yeah.
I would cover. Yes, it's absolutely true. This is not a replacement for your product catalog. This is a stopgap, right? This is to correct information that's wrong or fill in information that's missing. But it's not meant as a product management system, right? But we can use these extensions in combination with each other, right? I might create a new data point using a concatenation of multiple data points and use that as my decision, right? That lookup table can only work on one data point as its match lookup, but we can cheat by using the extensions in combination. So I'm going to switch over. Hopefully this works well. All right. Which screen are you guys seeing?
We're seeing the IQ screen, and it's a smaller window where I've got some, there's like a command window in the background, and you got a text message window in the background too. So,
all right, sorry about that.
That's looking better.
It decided to mirror my displays instead of sharing it. So you should see Tealium IQ.
Yeah, it looks good.
All right. So inside of here, I've got a sample site, Tealium demo, the simple e-commerce site plus a blog, so it covers a bunch of scenarios. But it's got some product information in here, and we'll go through those scenarios of correcting those product IDs, product SKUs, and so forth that are incorrect. So of course, I've got my data layer. I've created all this data points. A lot of this was imported from my WordPress plugin. Some of it I created myself, but you also notice AudienceStream attributes in here. We'll come back to that, right? I've got some extensions pre-made, and these are those same extensions that we saw in those screenshots. So let's just walk through how those are set up. The set data extension is going to set a data point or many data points. I can add multiple data points and set them in one swoop. So it's not just one data point. If I just want to say on this one condition, set multiple data points, create a virtual data layer or fill in gaps in that data layer, that's what the set data is for. So I can set my product ID here. I can set any placeholders we have in the data layer, or I can create a brand new one right there on the spot. So I'm going to correct my product ID, product name, and product price because we knew that those were broken on that specific SKU. So I'm putting a one condition, SKU equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm setting the data points here. So again, one SKU was off. I just need to fix those really quick. This is the way to do it. It gives me the ability to set multiple parameters at one time.
Can I pause here on something? We were talking to a customer that was using an analytics package, and the data was going into the analytics package incorrectly. And so that customer was trying to work with that large analytics vendor, and it turned into a project where it had to be scoped to correct certain product IDs. They wanted to do something to modify the data because it was coming across wrong. And so it was a $275,000 project that analytics company was scoping to take the data for a particular product coming across the wire and then append certain extra data to that. And so then the customer had the idea of, wait a second, if this is having to do with the data, instead of working with my web analytics vendor, let me call up the Tealium account manager. So they called up our account manager and the account manager, Tealium in San Diego, did exactly what Mondo's doing here, and the customer was elated because that saved them $275,000 plus project scoping and 3 weeks of time. They were able to do it in about 4 minutes using the set data value extension. So extensions, like Mondo says, very popular, very powerful, and probably my most favorite feature of Tealium as well. I just wanted to highlight that because that's a good practical customer example.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, again, I started with that slide of the data layer is key. We're fixing the data, or creating new data points or massaging the data before it gets to the vendors, right? We all know which analytics vendor that we're talking about there. $270,000 to basically do a rule on the back end that just says, oh, correct this, do a lookup table here and swap out two values, right? And that's not even like thousands of entries. That was probably just for 1 or 2 corrections.
Yeah.
But it's all the man hours and all the extra cost for that. And this is something you can completely manage before the data ever gets out. Make sure the data is clean going out, or fix it without having to go through a lengthy cycle. All right. So set data is one strategy to do that. If I come into here and then I look up that lookup table, so what happens when I have multiple data points I want to correct? I would use my lookup table. So again, I'm looking for a value in my SKU. I'm going to output a value in product ID. Now, I can only set one data point at a time with a lookup table, but I can use multiple lookup tables. So I've created the 3 SKUs that I'm updating, my outputs, and I love to put notes, right? Because you never know what that really means later on, or somebody in QA department comes to look and say, why do I have this value? It becomes one central place to find out where those product IDs are being corrected, okay? So destination product ID, we're looking up the value in SKU, and we're outputting product ID based on whatever matches. And we can set a default. I like to not set the defaults because I want to be aware of when those aren't failing. Or I can set a default that will trigger some kind of backend rule to say, hey, this is outside of the expected values. All right. So it's a really quick way to go ahead and compensate for that. But let's go. There's a big limitation there, right? I can only look at one data point at a time. I can only base it off the SKU. What if I need to base it off of multiple scenarios? I'm running multiple sites, and I had landing pages and home pages. I could create 100 load rules for 100 domains and 100 tags, or I can create a lookup table for one tag that sets its parameters. And the way I would do that is I need to look at 2 data points at once. So I'm going to use my join data. So this is going to combine my domain and my page type. And I can add more, and essentially you'll see how it builds out the string based on my delimiter. So it will take these data points and put them together. So now I have one data point that says domain, pipe, and then page type. So it might be domain 1 landing page. Now I can start targeting my pixel values to that. So I can have one tag, and we'll use AppNexus as an example. I can have that run across multiple domains and multiple pages and only manage one tag. I can run it globally. So here I'm taking that targeting string that I created in the join data. So I'm piggybacking on what happened in here because this order of operation matters, right? I can rearrange this, but this is very specific. I need that join data before this lookup table. I'm going to create an AppNexus ID, and I've got that mapped inside of a tag. But I'm just going to, inside my lookup match, now I'm combining 2 strings into one using the delimiter. So domain 1 landing page has an LP1 ID. Domain 2 landing page, LP2, and so forth, right? Domain product page, product 1. So I can go ahead and create this table of pixel IDs, and maybe AppNexus needs 2, 3 parameters. I would just duplicate this, call this the AppNexus add parameter, and then I would change out my values inside here, right? If this was a dash, and maybe that was the prefix I was using for those specifically, I can go quickly. I already have all my targets. I'm just changing out the pixel values or the parameter values. It's a great way to do your analytics setup. You want to have different UAIDs, different suite names for SiteCatalyst, for Google Analytics. You can say on this domain, have this suite name. And this is a practice that our deployment managers do often, or deployment engineers do often when we do deployments with you guys. All right. So some really simple strategies with just a couple of the extensions. I'm going to switch back to PowerPoint, and hopefully that will present. All right, can you see my screen again?
Yep, now let's extend it, the extensions.
Perfect. So again, we walked through those different extensions. We used a combination of them to create a more robust strategy. These are all building blocks. The extensions are building blocks, just like the data layer are building blocks. I can use those for logic. I can use that for manipulation or data to a vendor. We've got a great series on extensions, right? It's all in the learning community. Nobody likes to go to this one because it's the longest one there, but it will go through every extension. And these are things that, this is your toolkit, right? This is things that you can use to manipulate this data, build compliance on this data, generate new data. So I strongly advise going through some of these, right? Pick and choose some of them. Maybe as you have free time, look at more. But each of these series will walk through in depth what the extension does, give you a use case that you can run through yourself. All available in the learning community. All right. I promised something new. We've got a new data bundle. It's the Tealium built-in data bundle. So hopefully everybody's familiar with the data layer. You can add bundles. We can give you basic data sets, page, customer, e-commerce, even some provider bundles. These are doing the data mappings, creating the placements for you that we expect to come from the backend. So we've created some ones that expose some of the innards of UTag itself. I will know now if this is the start of the session. I can use that for logic, and a load rule says, don't fire that, hey, tell us what you think about the site on the very first page in the first 3 seconds. Let's give them some time to actually experience the site before we ask for feedback. Session page view count, right? How deep are they within the site? I can go 5 pages in, now fire off that tag. What do you think? Or maybe if I hit 15 pages and I haven't taken an action, maybe I want to pop up that chat window. Do you need some help? Are you having trouble finding stuff? We'll expose the visitor ID, session ID. When we talk about that UTag view and link, when those custom tracking events are happening, you can actually pick that up and know which one is which. We won't go into detail about that, but we'll also expose with profile which environment I'm using. So I can maybe push that back into my analytics pack and say, hey, this is coming from my dev profile. Let's not go and push this into our global report suite. Let's push this into a different report suite. Or prefix it so you can filter out later. All right. So this is now available to you inside of the UI. Really great. You can build some robust, really advanced capabilities inside of here.
I think we came out with that
So
about a month ago. Is that right? Showed about a month ago, and I think it was based on customer requests because they wanted to access more data. So partners, if you realize there's some internal Tealium data that you also want to have exposed, that's where that started, and let us know what other data you want exposed, and we could probably get that passed to you as well. So.
Yeah, that visitor ID, for example, will be coming up pretty shortly.
Yep.
So we've unified the data. So instead of having each tag collecting its own data point, we're going to say, here's the product name, and we're going to push to 3 vendors. Here's the product price, same format, same convention, to all my 4 vendors that are using that. I'm now owning that. All right. But now let's show the money, or at least the cooler stuff, because, well, we're solving the one problem of we can manage multiple tags, we can have the same data throughout them, but we're still stuck with siloed views of these users, right? So I've got the same data point, page name, page type, but I'm being treated differently by each of these vendors, right? And we'll walk through that scenario. It's all about the customer. Your customer is made up of multiple data points, what their likes, their hobbies, their interests, where they came from, what they're doing on your site. But unfortunately, that's fragmented with the different channels. So I've got my desktop, I've got my mobile, I've got my offline, in-store, right? But sadly, it's fragmented even more. And sadly, you can't see the faded out versions. But these vendors each will have different profiles, personas of this user across these channels. So Adobe has one profile for desktop and mobile, and maybe none for offline. Maybe they don't have that data. Same thing, Google. They don't have access to that. Maybe IBM is the only one there. Getting that unified view of that user is super important. So we created visitor stitching, and visitor stitching is probably one of the complex scenarios, but I like to think it's pretty simple when you walk through an actual, here's what it would look like. So we'll do that for visitor stitching. I come in all authenticated, right? And I picked a Nike site because I miss running, or not Nike, New Balance. And I miss running, so I'm coming in here. I'm a brand new user, you know nothing about me. You have some third-party data that came in with me. It's what segment I'm in, what kind of general interest I'm in. But I've come to your website. I've got some first-party data. I've taken 2 actions. Well, I know I'm interested in these shoes right now. So that's information that we can use. And let's entice that user to become a known user. So pop up, hey, would you like to sign up for our newsletter? Would you like to get a 5%, 10%, whatever? 50% would be great if I can get those pair of shoes, half price. But now I've been enticed to authenticate, and now I have some more data about a user. I've got 3 actions here. I've got the 2 actions I took while I was unauthenticated because Tealium is becoming that proxy, that unified view so far in this channel, and the action of authenticating, becoming a user. So now I have a member ID and an email as well. So now we know what Mondo looks like, and it's pretty close. But I come back in mobile. So I got that email. So I signed up for the coupon. I come back on my mobile device. So that's where I open all my email. And I get that coupon. But we're also promoting a different pair of shoes because we're not connecting this information in real time. We're not saying, hey, ESP or product recommendation engine, when I come back to this site through this coupon, this is Mondo. He's interested in these shoes. Instead, we're showing him some orange shoes. And I look different because I'm in a different channel. We have an email. We know that came through. Maybe we have a device ID if it's an app, but we're still having a different view of that same user. I can take some actions there, but the whole time I'm thinking, well, the shoes I wanted are not the shoes you're showing me or promoting to me. You should be showing me the shoes I'm looking for in this other channel right away because you know who I am. And here's where the cost is important, right? Because now I've got email campaigns sending Mondo 1 the black shoes and Mondo 2 the orange shoes. And we know that I'm paying for each of these users, even though they're the same user, because I'm not combine them, or I put in 2 different preferences. And then later on, I buy the shoes, and I am still frustrated. Now I'm the angry Mr. T Mondo, because I'm still getting emailed for these 2 shoes. It says, hey, I already bought these shoes. Why are you still emailing me? Hey, are you still interested in the shoes? It's because we're not real-time connecting that. One, this is the same user, and connecting the data between the different vendors. This would be site data telling me what shoes I have. Maybe we would push that to CRM, we push it to ESP, but none of those are communicating together. There's no orchestration going on. And so now I've got 3 distinct views of a user, and I've got a frustrated user who just converted because we're still targeting them for something that they've already done. All right. And I never even wanted those orange shoes, so I'm even double frustrated. So what we've done is we've created that visitor stitch. We say anytime we see any of those identifiers, what we call visitor ID, I want to bring that back to that same user profile. Whether it's desktop, mobile, offline, anywhere, I'm going to have a unified view of the user, but also I know how many actions I took. I took 3 here, 2 here, 1 here. Those all add up to my value as a customer. So don't treat me as a low-value customer because this is the first time you've seen me on channel. Treat me as the high-value customer I am because I'm spending lots of money or being really engaged. We'll build out an engagement model next. Now I've got a unified view of that user. I know what they're actually interested in because I'm keeping that information. That's first-party information I own that I can propagate. Now I can assign some enriched information about them. Okay, this is a VIP. Or I can have other information. This is a window shopper. He's not really going to buy those shoes. He just keeps looking at them. Watch their videos of fanboy and so forth. So we can go through first party, third party, but I think it'd be easier if we jump into some actual demo, right?
Yep.
So what we'll do is we'll build an engagement model. It's a very, very simple use case, but it's very powerful because you can right away start deciding which vendors do I want to expose this user to. Do I want feedback from this user? Do I want to offer support, or do I want to entice them to convert, right? Do I want to take this anonymous user into a known user because, hey, they have a high engagement level, let's get this guy to come back, or let's get this guy to convert. Call out a VIP user, but I'll also show you how to validate that while it's happening. All right, so I'm going to switch back to the browser. Probably have some display funkiness, but here we go. Should be seeing IQ again.
Not yet. We're still seeing the Let's Get Geeky live demo slide. There we go. Looks like it's moved over now.
Helps if I unpause. All right, so
Details.
I've done the setup. I'm going to switch over to AudienceStream.
Yep.
Right, so hopefully everybody's familiar, or this will be your first time. The first thing we created the data layer in Tealium, but we also have enrichments here. We have attributes about the user. And we'll start you off with a bunch of them, right? So these are great data points that will help you as you're building blocks. Event counts, was it a direct visit, is their first visit, lifetime, dates, and so forth. But what do all those mean? Just like we have that series on the extensions, we also have a great series on the attributes. And this will walk through, again, each attribute, give you a blurb about them, and maybe a sample use case. So I'll go through a couple of these. Badge, really important. This is your segment. So when we talk about AudienceStream as enrichment and segmentation engine, we call them badges, but these are segments. These are segments. These are data points that we're going to build an audience off of, or we're going to start building, grouping them together. A metric, probably the core data point or attribute.
Right.
This is just going to be an incrementer. I can do a page counter. I can do an event counter. I can do a lifetime value. How much money have I spent throughout? Maybe even correct that when I do an offline return, push that data through AudienceStream. We have omnichannel enrichment. Tallies are really useful for finding preference. So every category that I look through, every product I look through, I can keep a tally of which categories, which products, and then see which will automatically calculate the favorite. And then you can promote that, use that for personalization. Say, hey, remember these shoes? That's most likely to resonate because that was the one I looked at most. I like to use multiple tallies. Look at the browsing preference, but also look at the conversion process preference. I use myself as an example. I look at Best Buy or I look at these electronic stores, and I drool over a bunch of stuff. But the reality is, I go and I buy the $5 adapter or the $20 or Apple, the $80 adapter, right? If they targeted me on just the products I drooled about and I have no reality of buying versus the categories that I actually convert more frequently and say, hey, we got a new connector, why don't you promote that? That's an effective strategy that we can use multiple, just like we use multiple extensions. I can use multiple tallies or other attributes to create better targeting. We got lists. Traits are very important when we start talking about visitor IDs. We can validate that a visitor ID will work at scale by using a trait first, something we'll go through with your deployment engineers when we're creating your strategies. But dates and funnels and timelines are super important. When did certain events happen? Have I gotten to certain points in a funnel? I want to make a decision on that. If I talked about the engagement scoring model, super simple to set up. I'm going to create a metric, and I'm going to increment it based on some business logic. So I'm going to call this engagement score. And I'm going to keep this for the lifetime, or I can keep it for the current visit. And what I often do is I'll actually create both of these. What is my engagement today, and what is my engagement historically, and make a decision off of that. Keep it very simple. I've got multiple ways I can increment this metric. I can do a product, a ratio, a difference, a sum, right? When we start compounding attributes, this is where it gets really powerful, and this is where you can really push the value to your clients. Simple metric, though, is also valuable. I'm going to increment by a custom value, simple 1, right? If I was doing a lifetime value instead, I can do an order total, and I can take that order total or order subtotal, and every time I see an order, just push that. So now I've got $10 or $0, $100, $500. We can increment it that way as well based on that data layer. I'm just going to do a simple model. I'll give them 1/4 of a point for every page view that happens. So any page event, I'm going to give 1/4 of a point. I'm going to create another increment and say for every blog post, I want to give them 1 point because blogs are more important to us on our e-commerce site for some reason, or maybe we have a publisher site. I'm going to create a new rule. So instead of just on any page event, I want to be more specific. I want to be a blog view. I'm going to come to my data layer just like I did in IQ, building load rules. I have access to my data layer, but also the enriched data points I create as I'm going through here. So I might take page type, and I'll say if the page type contains equals so forth, blog, then I know that they're in a blog view, and finish. And I can make that with ands and ors as complex as I need to be. I'm going to create a simple model, right? This is creating value for your customer within the first hours of having AudienceStream. I'll give them $5 points for video views. So we'll say this is a video view, and this would be event-based, right? So we're going to leverage some of that event information that we have, and I don't seem to have it, so I'm actually going to add that right now, or just leverage event count as a placeholder. So event count, again, this is all coming from the data layer. If it equals video play, that's what the event triggered in the IQ is. Now I'm going to give them 5 points. So I've got an automated attribution system here, or not attribution, but engagement scoring. I can put negative points in there. I love to put negative points. If the total page views are greater than 15 and the cart is empty, start subtracting 0.5 point for every page view they do. Right? So we can start creating some really complex models here, but very simply, I've created an engagement score. It took me about 1 minute talking through it. But now this is a new data point available for me to make decisions off of. What I can do there is I can now create an audience. I want to start segmenting the people who have certain values. So maybe I might take an attribute. I'll create a new badge. I'll call these the VIP users. And the enrichment is just simply assign or remove the badge. So I'm going to assign the badge when their engagement score is greater than 50. So you got to do a lot of videos or a lot of blog reading to get this. But you'll see that in my data layer dropdown, engagement score is already there. I can use that. I can say greater than 50. And I've created a new segment, and then I can target off of that. So I can come into audience discovery, and inside of here, it'll show me based on my badges. Here's my new VIP users. how many people are live hitting that, how many people are historic from that point on historically, right? Because
quick question, Armando. Quick question. To as you're making those changes and creating those badges and segments, those metrics and details, do you have to hit the green button to save publish in the upper right corner, or are you able to test and see that before you complete and submit your changes?
Yeah, no, you do have to save and publish, right? Because we want to create those rules and actually process them. But after that point, from that point on, VIP users becomes a badge that can be assigned.
Yeah.
I'm having live data because nobody's on my demo site right now. But I can come in here and I can create that audience. And the audiences are what we act on. So I'm going to say anybody who's got that VIP badge, VIP users, add that filter. I'm going to say this is my VIP audience. So if the VIP is assigned, then I want to put them in a special audience. And this is where I can use my act. I can use my connectors, just like I do my tag marketplace, and I can push out to all my vendors in real time. So I can go and push to my display network and say, this is a VIP user, I want to up my bid on him. Or I can push to Credio and say, hey, retarget this user, here's the products he was looking at. Or sign him up for an email newsletter, their intent to buy, right? So we can start using cart abandonment as an example. Or push to my lookalike models. One thing that's super important is as I've gone through here, and like Sean said, I'm going to go ahead and save this so that I actually have that VIP badge or segment and publish that. While that's happening, I'm going to come back when it's already done. In my data layer, when I refresh here, I would actually see, I'm not going to save any of that, I would actually see my AudienceStream enrichments, right? So everything I create in AudienceStream as new data points, those become data layer elements inside of here. So now my AudienceStream attributes were 29, now they're 35. I can see my engagement scores here. So I can say this is an engaged user historically when I see them on a new visit on a website, on a mobile device. And I can create a decision there. I can say pop up this survey, pop up this coupon, because this is a user that we want to interact with. All right. So all these data points become data points that funnel right back into the flow of the AudienceStream and the data layer enrichment. All right. So how do I know that's working? We're going to use live events. And Sean, if you can start hitting some of the site too, right?
Yeah.
It's going to come in here, the page a couple times. Live events is going to show us all the activity that's happening. It's going to show me real time all the events that are coming through. Now, some delay inside of there, right? But I can go and trace into each of these. So I have one event here. Somebody came to the home page. Here's all the data layers. So I talked about that UDO populating through AudienceStream. So all this data is coming through. Here are all my keys, and here's the actual values, right? So even that account number, the account name, and so forth. So I can see all of this information. This is part of the data layer I have access to. Cookies, just like that builds up part of that data layer, I have access to that. I can make all the decisions based on these data points. So all of those components that made up that data layer become are funneled through the AudienceStream collect tag. So it's just a tag that you deployed inside the tag management. I did that very simply here. It's actually my only tag. Just says, hey, push it all to my account in AudienceStream. That's it. Very simple. So this is great. I can see all of that, but it's not really great to know, well, what is my lifetime value? What is my engagement score? How do I know that that's working? What I'll do is I'll come to Discover and Visitor Trace. And I'm going to start a trace. And so now I can look at an individual session. I'll take this trace ID. I'll come to my website. And I'm going to use my Tealium Tools extension. So everybody should definitely have this because this is great. I'm going to open up my audience trace. I'm going to join a trace. So I'll paste that value here and start. All right, so now it refreshed. Now we'll see that inside of AudienceStream, it's going to pick up all the live events that are happening. And it delays it so I can actually read. I see, hey, I received a visitor event. I can expand this and I can get information about it. I can see, okay, here's the data points that came through. But as you see over here, these are now highlighting. These are the badges and the audiences that I'm falling into my metrics. Look at my engagement score. I'm already at 0.25 because I saw one page. If I go to shop and t-shirts, right, if I hit a couple of these pages, I'll get different scores for that. And I will see that come up in real time. Visitor event received. Right? I can see lifetime event count set to 2. Engagement score was set to 0.5. And you can see all the events that are happening, all the logic actually taking place for your business rules. This is how you validate that those rules are actually working. So I hit 3 pages, hit 4 pages, now I'm at 1. If I start hitting the blog, now I'm going to get more points, assuming I actually had page type set up properly in this demo. But now my score will start jumping by increments of 1, or actually 1.25, right? Because we didn't exclude the blog for that 0.25. And we can go back and we can tweak that rule, because now I'm validating at an individual point, tweak the rules, make sure they're absolutely exact. I can see exactly what rules inside here are contributing to this, and I can validate that there. And I can validate that at the mass scale. Again, when I go to audience discovery, how many people are falling into my VIP customers? Now I should actually have some live traffic, well, 1, so it's me. But this will be showing me as I fall into different badges, and I can segment that down based on other attributes. I want to then say how many people viewing this are on Chrome, how many people are on mobile, and so forth. And then start creating audiences so I can filter down to the audience I want and create a new audience and then act on that.
Hey, Mondo, when you build that audience and you have that audience that's available, would you show how to pass that audience over to Google Analytics so that way the Google Analytics data is reflecting the audience that you build in AudienceStream?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can come into my Google Analytics tag, and I'll have to add it, right? Come in, Analytics. Should have picked Universal, but same difference. So I'm going to come to my data mappings, just like I would do a normal configuration. And again, inside of my data layer now are my new attributes and my badges. So that VIP user is a badge. I can pass that to a custom dimension or custom destination. So it's a visitor attribute. I'm going to go to 16 for whatever reason. So now this is going to be a data point that I'm pushing to Google Analytics, and I can start filtering. I can start saying, I want to look at my VIP users and look at the historical information on those as an audience. Right? So it's super simple. All the data points come back as part of the data layer. When we leverage our dynamic data mappings, it's the same as we do with any tag. I can pass that to multiple tags, right? So again, I want to go to Criteo, and I can use the Criteo tag on the page and say, take that VIP, pass it in as a data point, and I'll just put it wherever it is. Or I can do that through my AudienceStream connector. I can come to the connectors, and I can push this here, because sometimes I don't have a web property. I might be doing this in a mobile SDK. I might be doing this in an offline enrichment, and I want to push that updated information to my vendor. So all of our connectors are just like tags, except they're working as an API outside of the browser. So as my business logic happens, as those trace events trigger, I can trigger this Criteo tag on certain actions. So I would give it login credentials. I'm going to tell it what kind of event it is. It's a product event. I'm going to create that action based on when people join my audience of VIP audience. Okay. And then I can pass it additional information. So I pass it whatever set information is needed, pass it my email or pass it a unique ID. Now you've got that visitor ID that you can pass in, right? And I can pass extra data sets. So I want to go and say, pass the date of the last visit to Criteo, and they're expecting that as var1. And I can pass in other attributes. I can pass in the fact that what it was their lifetime event count. What is their engagement score? Pass that engagement score as var2, and now they can make a decision inside of Criteo that says, okay, highly engaged user, we know the products that they've looked at, let's promote this higher. Let's put more CPC on there. And so I can assign that, and I can say, okay, now this connector is going to start pushing out to Criteo that information that I mapped when they join that audience. And I can so when they leave the audience, right? So I might do something like that for an exact target. Push them in each sign, add them to an email list when they add something to the cart, their intent to buy. And I say, if they're still in that audience at the end of their session, right? So if I come back to my action here, so if they're still in the audience at the end of the session, that's when I actually want to push that to exact target or Mandrill or MailChimp, whoever it is, to say, this is a person who's abandoned cart. I want to convert them. I like to delay, right? We talked about that multi-channel scenario.
Yeah.
Give them a couple hours, because I looked at it on my desktop or I looked at it on my mobile. I'm not going to buy on my phone. I'm going to switch to my desktop, or I'm going to wait till I get home because I'm at work. Give me time to convert, and I can merge those interactions based on the user IDs across channel. So give them 8 hours. Hey, we know that they have plenty of time to get home and convert, and I can go ahead and save that, right? And now this won't actually send to retarget that user until they get home. They've had time to switch to another channel, and I can do a removal rule, says if they're not in this audience anymore, then remove them from that list. So lots of capabilities inside of there. I'll switch accounts actually so we can see some live data. But maybe it's a good time to see if there's any questions in the QA.
Yeah, one of them, passing that data and that audience over to Google Analytics, that was one of those questions that came across the wire, so well done.
Pretty smooth there.
We're clear for right now. And I'll prompt our partners because we got about 3 or 4 more minutes to go, partners. So if you have any questions or anything you want Mondo to dive into a little more deeply or show or cover again, drop those questions in the question panel and we'll cover those. We've got about 3 more minutes and then we'll wrap it up for this week.
Okay. So this is actually Tealium's account. So this is our main corporate website. So you see that we've created our own segments or badges for users. Power users, right? We talk about like people who are using Tealium IQ. The more you do inside of there, we're actually segmenting and saying, hey, this is a person who is a power user, or maybe this is a person who needs support. They're having issues. They keep trying to do the publish and having publish errors. We can start picking up on those things, create a segment, and use that as a decision to then take action, right? That action might be pushing to Salesforce, hey, update their record, saying, hey, this user might be having trouble, trigger an email to their support person. Have them reach out and say, do you need help publishing? Do you need help figuring out how to use the Credio tag, and so forth. Could be changing the display ads. Any of our connectors, I can be pumping it to Splunk, and I can do some data analysis there. We talked about data access last week. I can be pushing it there and doing whatever analysis I want. But all these connectors are real time. All of these data points that I created in AudienceStream become data layer elements here. And then I can leverage my 850 connectors or tags here, right? So I've got all the tags that I can work with inside of here can all leverage that data now. I can take that optimizedly tag and I can add that data point of a VIP user. I can pass that to them as a custom badge, right? I can take that engagement score model and I can say here, optimizedly, use this as a decisioning and data points to decide what content to test with, and I can push that inside of there. So it's very powerful, all the connectivity of the data layer between IQ, between AudienceStream, between data access. It all feeds inside of each other.
Very cool. Well, and so, some of the takeaways, right? At the beginning you talked about we can leverage a hierarchical data object, right? So that's one thing. It doesn't have to always be flat. We can always leverage the data coming across the wire. Another one is, you guys, everybody on the line has seen now how to build an engagement score from inside of AudienceStream. And I want to, put out there that as a partner of ours, if we provide you a partner account, you could set up a very similar showcase like what Mondo has done here with his demo site, his demo account, his Tealium AudienceStream and IQ account, and so forth. So, I invite you guys, partners, to do the same. I really would like to get you guys to that type of proficiency because then you can provide that insight to your customers. And again, they're not going to find anything like this anywhere else on the planet, just from you guys. So, back to you, Mondo.
Yeah. So, that's really it. Hopefully, what you're taking away is you got that unified data curation inside of IQ, inside of mobile, inside of omnichannel, the data layer and the extensions, adding data compliance, making sure you're fixing data points, making sure data points you don't want going out, something like a crypto extension, just correcting all the data, or creating new data points. But very importantly, single view of that user, customer, right? It's all about that customer. It's all about converting them, not just, hey, how is an audience in general doing? How do I get Mondo to convert? Because Mondo's an individual. What triggers him or what converts him is going to be different than all other males, right? I don't do cars. I don't really follow sports. So you show me the pretty pictures. You show me the camera. That's what's going to convert me. And then that real-time action, right? We go back to that scenario of what happens when I don't know. I'm paused so you can't see anything. Didn't help any. But going back to this scenario, right, if I start targeting this user wrong because I'm not taking advantage of all the data I have throughout the different channels in real time, I'm just becoming this angry, disgruntled user, right? And you're wasting a lot of money here. Saying, hey, we're sending off mail, we're sending off, we're paying vendors for services we don't need to utilize because this guy converted. He's already got his shoes. Stop bugging him about the other shoes.
Exactly. That's the idea. For those partners that are going to take advantage of the Tealium Advanced Partner Training, September 1st and 2nd in San Diego, I'll be there as well as Mondo. So you get to meet our subject matter expert star of the show that we featured today. So you get to see if his character, his cartoon character represents him, resembles him in any way, or maybe it's completely off base. But either way, you'll get to meet the star in person. But that wraps up another week. I wanted to thank you, Mondo, very much for going through this detail and the cool criteria that you talk to your partners and customers about. Thank you, Mondo.
Absolutely.
And partners, again, thank you for taking time out of your week to spend with us. We will close out this recording and then post this out on the website. And this will be for your future use, or if there was someone who wasn't able to attend today, you could pass this to them and get them to take a look at the recording. But again, we'll sign off here and sign in next week. We'll have Jay Calavis. He'll go through a couple of things that he explains to his partners and customers when he's talking to them live in presentations. And that'll wrap for another week. So again, Mondo, thank you very much. Nicole, thank you very much. And we'll see you guys next week.